Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you've all had a wonderful day. Today's video is my reading wrap up for January. So I'm going to be going through my TBR and how I got on with it. And at the end of this video there is going to be a little bit of an unhaul of books. So yeah, we're just going to get into it. If you see me looking down, I am looking at my lovely reading journal that Nikki made me for Christmas, because it's just got some notes and things, like a little bit of statistics that I don't normally do, but Nikki made me a gorgeous journal and I'm using it, and I feel like you guys might want to know my stats. So in January I read for 23 days. So I kind of was doing it based on if I read for more than 30 minutes, I was counting it as a day read. So I read for 23 days instead of the 31. Okay, so let's get into my TBR. So the first book I read was The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black with the lovely Nikki. Nikki has read this book or this book series before. I had never read it before, so it was my first time going through it. I gave this a 5-star rating. I loved it. If anything, I wanted a little bit more information about certain parts that the characters went through, but I loved it. It was incredible. I felt so in love with the characters. I can't wait to reread it again at some point, but I loved it. It was 5 stars. Next up was, where are we? Chris Colfer's The Land of Stories, The Wishing Spell. So this is the first book in a 6-book series. I loved it. This one follows 2 siblings who fall into the Land of Stories and meet various fairy tale characters. Now, I gave this book a 4-star rating. I loved it. I listened to it via audiobook, which was really nice, but for the other books in the series, they don't have the audiobooks on Scribd, so I will be listening, or I will be reading it physically for the rest of the books. But yes, I gave this one 4 stars. Next up was, now this one wasn't originally on my TBR, but I'd been trying to work my way through my Cecilia Ahern book collection, because I went through a stage of buying all her books before I'd actually read one of them, so I didn't know if I liked her writing style or not, and yes, we will come to that later. But yeah, I read The Year I Met You by Cecilia Ahern. I gave it 3 stars. This book was a very slice of life kind of thing. I don't even remember the story. That's how much it didn't stick with me. Yeah, I literally don't remember anything about it. I don't remember anything. I gave it 3 stars, so it wasn't bad, but yeah, I didn't really rate it. I would never read this again. So there's that one. Next up, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon by Stephen King. Now, I went into this thinking it was going to be a bit of a romance kind of esque vibe for King, and I was completely wrong. It follows Trisha, who goes on a walk with her family and she becomes lost in the woods, and Tom Gordon is a baseball player who she loves, and she creates him in her mind while she's lost in the woods to help her through the ordeal. I hated it. I gave it 2 stars because there were certain parts of the story that I thought were funny or I thought were moving, but ultimately this was 200 and, how many pages is it? 216 pages of not very much. Like, nothing happened really, that I felt nothing happened. You know, she'd been stuck in the woods, nothing really happened for all of about 50 pages, and then in the last 30 pages stuff started to happen. It just wasn't for me. I just didn't get it. I didn't know why we needed a story about this. Unpopular opinion maybe, I had a little look on Goodreads and there were so many people that said how much they loved it. I'm not one of them, and yeah, I gave it 2 stars, so I will never read that one again. Next up, I have Fairest of All by Serena Valentino. I went into this thinking that the story would be slightly different as it's from the villain's perspective. It was slightly different, but not in the way I expected. It essentially follows the exact same story as Snow White. It's just from the way the evil queen sees it. And I don't know if I enjoy it or if I don't. And the sad part is I have all of these, plus all of the Twisted Tales ones. And yeah, I'm just not sure how I feel about it. I gave it 3 stars because I did enjoy it. But again, I don't know quite how I feel about it. Let's put it that way. Next up, Bridget Collins, The Binding. Let's take my little post-it note off of there. I read this one via audiobook, and while I enjoyed the story, I couldn't wait for it to be done. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. It's one that I feel like I might need to reread again, but physically read it rather than listen to it. Sorry, I've got a really itchy nose. This is the problem with living with cats. You always feel like you're covered in cat hair. I'm not, but I just feel that way. But yeah, it was a nice story, and I went into it with a certain feeling of how it was going to be, and it was completely different. There was a male-on-male romance in here that I was not expecting, and I thought it would be a bit more fantasy, but it's kind of real life with a fantasy element. It was very odd. It wasn't what I was expecting. I liked it enough. I gave it 3 stars, and I will be keeping it to reread at some point. So there's that one. Next up, Yvonne Woon, Dead Beautiful. Again, went into this one thinking it was going to be slightly different and got Twilight vibes, like full on Twilight. Girl moves to new school after her parents die. It's not a spoiler, it's on the back. And she meets a boy in a science class, and he's cold to the touch, and then he disappears off, and she doesn't see him for a couple of days, and then he comes back and he's all really intense, and it just gave me Edward Bella Twilight vibes. I gave it a 4-star because I did really love the full-on cheese of this. And when you get to the end and you realise it's kind of Twilight, but it's really not, it's like, oh my god, how did I not see that? I loved the ending of this. This is actually part of a trilogy. I wasn't aware it was part of a trilogy until I finished this book, went to rate it on Goodreads, and it said like #1, and I was like, So I had a little look, and it is part of a trilogy. The books are really hard to get a hold of. I think I can borrow them from my library, but I can't purchase them without them being ridiculously expensive second-hand books. So I think at some point I will try and borrow them from my library to finish the saga, but incredible. Like, was not expecting the ending we had, and the ending did not give me Twilight vibes. If anything, the meeting was Twilighty, but the rest was like, damn, that's a completely different story. So yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. I really want to read the next 2, but I know that these books are a priority. So this one I will have to come back to at some point. Right, the next one that was on my TBR was Katie Ford's Country Escape. Now, this one, again, is a very slice of life kind of book. Not a lot happens. It's just kind of an everyday life situation. And normally I don't mind that, but this one, I couldn't do it. I got 138 pages in of 373, and I thought, I can't do it. It's just not interesting. I cannot continue. Basically, Fran moves into an old farmhouse and she has a year to turn it around and try and make it better. There's a love interest, But I found that after 138 pages, I didn't care whether she fixed the farm. I didn't care whether she got with a bloke she's not supposed to get with. I just didn't care. So, yeah, that one's a goner. The other one I had that I was meant to read as well was Brian Jake's The Outcasts of Redwall. And I don't know if I mentioned it in a book unhaul video that I did fairly recently, that I'd been listening to the first 2 Redwall books and I found them quite easy to listen to, but reading the physical book I actually found quite difficult. There's a lot of description and a lot of sort of atmospheric, you know, world building, and I couldn't do it. So I am donating my Redwall books to my lovely friend Hannah, who I know adores them and read them when she was younger, so they can add to her collection. But for me, I can't do it. I think I got about 20 pages in and I just found it really hard and really grueling. So yeah, I had 2 DNF books, but I read 8 in total. The last book I read was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and I have actually lent the physical copy to a friend of mine because we were sort of talking about it and she seemed a little bit interested. So I said, you can borrow my physical copy and just let me have it back when you're done. So I listened to The Night Circus and boy did I find it confusing. So again, it's a little bit like The Binding. I think I'm going to have to come back to it at some point and read it physically to really kind of gauge how I feel about the story. I did like the way it ended, and it was kind of one of those ones where it's like, I like it, but I don't know how I feel. So yeah, I will have to come back to The Night Circus at some point to really know how I feel about it. So my wrap-up statistics. Total books I read were 8. Star ratings, I had 1 5-star, 2 4-stars, 4 3-stars, and 1 2-star. I had 41 hours of audiobook that I listened to. So as I said when I was sort of showing you some of the books, some of them I listened via audiobook, so I haven't counted them as a physical page count because I didn't physically read them. So although I have read them, I haven't physically read them, so they're not going to go towards my physical page count sum at the end of the year. So yeah, I listened to 41 hours of audiobooks and I read 1,458 actual pages. Sorry, the cats are having a moment. So genres, I read 5 fantasy, 1 contemporary, 1 thriller, and 1 is in the other category. I believe that the one that's in the other category is The Land of Stories because technically it's a middle grade fantasy, so I think I put it in with middle grade. But the origin of the books was all owned, so I didn't, although I borrowed them on Scribd, I owned the physical book, so I'm counting them as read physical books, if that makes sense. So yeah, I read 8 books, which is, or was the target-ish, give or take. I think there might have been 9 that was on my target actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so there was 9 on my TBR for January, but obviously with a couple of DNFs in there, I just didn't quite make up my finishing amount. I think I finished The Night Circus the day after January 31st, so on the 1st of February, so I'm still counting it in my January because I only had a few pages left to finish, but I really did struggle with the books I had. As I said, there just wasn't any that I thought that's fabulous apart from 2. The rest were kind of flops, or I'm not sure how I feel. So yeah, they took me a little bit longer. So right, let's get into the unhaul because you've been sat here for like nearly 15 minutes. So let's go through the books I actually read this month first, and I can tell you what's happening with them. The Binding is staying. Dead Beautiful is staying. It's leaving. Staying. Leaving. Leaving. And then these 2 are also staying. Now on to the others. Now I have had a Cecilia Ahern culling. I just can't get on board with her stories, and for that reason most of these, well, these ones are leaving. So I have Love Rosie. I absolutely adore the film, but I tried listening to the first 4 chapters of the audiobook, and a lot of it is written in kind of text or letter format to various people, and I couldn't get on board with it. I love the film and I will always love the film, but for me the book isn't the one. I'm also getting rid of Perfect and Flawed. I believe these 2 are a duology. They're YAs, which is very different for her, but I think after reading all the other books by Cecilia Ahern and not feeling interested, we're still here. So they're gonna go. The Book of Tomorrow and How to Fall in Love are all leaving me. So yeah, I can't get on board with them. They're just not something that I think I'm ever going to read, and I feel like they've been here a really, really, really long time. So for that, those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those 8 books are leaving, which means I have read 8, but I am also decluttering 8, which does make me feel pretty good, and it has freed up some more space on my shelves. At the moment, all the books on these shelves I have never read. I have a little pile just down here next to my reading chair on which I put all of the books that I have read, so that when I have freed up enough shelf space, I can put on the ones I have read and know what's what. But at the moment, because there are so many unread, the read ones are sitting down here and the unread are here. But yes, that is my reading wrap up and unhaul for January. If you have not seen my TBR for February, then head over there. I've given myself a challenge. So yeah, stick around and definitely subscribe to find out how I get on with my February TBR. And yeah, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.